throw the old Unity's Animator into the trash and use DOTween instead. With it, you can create smooth animations with easing and chain them together through code. Just write one line of code and you are done. I have few objects on which we will be using DOTween to animate them, such as some spikes in the floor, some spinning blade, some blade in the floor, giant boulder and some shaking floors. But before that we need to install the package, so go to the Unity Asset Store and search for DOTween. It is this package created by Giant, and you can just install it and open it in Unity. As we have the package installed, we'll also need to set up the DOTween, so we can go to Tools, Giant, and open the utility panel where we can just set it up and we can select which modules we want to use, so I will use all of them and hit apply. Let's begin with animating these spikes, so I have them as two individual objects and we will be just moving them up and down, so let's add the script and jump into it. To use DOTween we need to add using the G.tweening. Just for testing, I will be moving these spikes up and down with my arrow keys. Because we will be moving these spikes, we need to access the transform, and then all of the functions start with do. So we have do shake position, shake rotation, scale, punch, rotate, all of that stuff. So for now we can just use do move. To make it a bit more convenient for us, I will use the local move, and we are moving it just on one axis, so I will use the local move Z. So we have variables for the minimum and the maximum Z position as for where the spikes should be, and it is the Z axis because the spikes are rotated, so normally it would be the Y axis. And let's also add a variable for the duration, for how long it should take it to move up or down, and in the function we can then just input the end value, so in case we are moving it down it will be the minimum Z, and then the duration. That's really it, and we can do the same thing for the up arrow. Back in Unity, don't forget to set the minimum Z and the maximum Z, and now with pressing the arrows I can easily make the spikes move up and down, and you can see there's already some easing added to it. To change the easing of DOTween is really simple, we can just change some functions, so we can call set ease, and we can set the ease type, so some of the eases are starting with in, some with out, and some with in out. When it is starting with in, it means that it is going to ease the beginning of the animation, when it is out it will ease the end, and when it is in and out it will ease both the beginning and the end of the animation. The sign easing is one of the basic ones, but there's also a ton of options that you can choose from. Let's now take a look at rotating the spinning blade, so again I will add new script to it. Even though the spinning blade should be rotating pretty much all the time, we can create DOTween just on start and give it infinite looping. But before we do that, we need to rotate it, so we can access the transform and use the function do local rotate. So we are just rotating it by 360 degrees on the Z-axis. But as we play the game, nothing is happening, because we are saying that it should rotate to 360 degrees, and 360 degrees is pretty much the same as 0 degrees. So to make sure that we can rotate even beyond 360 degrees, we can also set the rotate mode, and there are a few of them, so in this case we can use the fast beyond 360. And yep, we can see that it is rotating 360 degrees around, but it has stopped because we didn't set the looping. We can do this the same way that we have been setting the easing, so just by chaining the functions. In this case we'll use set loops. -1 means infinite, and then if we want we can also set the easing. In this case I am just setting it to linear, which means pretty much no easing. So now it is constantly rotating by 360 degrees around. Let's now take a look at the saw blade in the floor, which will be moving from side to side and rotating at the same time. We want the saw blade to move from one side to another, but then move back. So you would think that we can create just two tweens, where one would move it to the end and the second one back to the start. But this wouldn't work because we would be playing both of these tweens at the same time. So instead, let's create a sequence where you can just sequence those tweens. So I'm creating the sequence, saving it into a variable, and I'm also setting the looping onto it, because it will be constantly moving from left to right, from left to right. And to the sequence, we can simply append new tweens, which means that they are going to be added at the end of the list. So I'm just adding a tween that will move it to the end X position and setting the ease to linear. And to this sequence we can add as many tweens as we want, so I'm adding a new do local move tween, which will move it back to the start X position. Back in Unity, don't forget to set the start X and the end X positions. As we can see, the saw blade is moving from right to left. As it gets to the end, yep, it is going to switch the sides, and as it gets back to the start, it should again begin looping. Now let's add the rotation, and this one we shouldn't be adding to the sequence, otherwise it would first move to the left, then move to the right, and then rotate, but we want it to rotate all the time, so we can just use transform.doRotate. I'm rotating the saw blade just locally, by 360 degrees on the y-axis. I set the rotate mode to the local axis add, so it's going to add to the current rotation. I've set the easing to linear and set the loops to -1, which means that it's going to be looping forever. And yep, now we can see the saw blade is also rotating while it is moving. There is actually one better way to make the tweening of the position, because you can notice that we are pretty much still tweening between those two same points, just in a different order. Instead of creating the sequence, we can just use the classic do local move on the x-axis, setting the easing and the loops as usual, and we have one additional parameter in the setLoops function, which is the loop type, and we have the incremental type, restart type and the yo-yo type, and as you can imagine, the yo-yo is going from one side to another and back to the start, so this is really what we need. And we can see that with the yo-yo we have achieved the same effect, so it is going back and forth. Next, let's take a look at the shaking floors. So I will again add the shaking floor script to all of them. Shaking the position is really simple. Again, we can just grab the transform and call the function doShakePosition. So just set the duration and all of the optional parameters of the shaking. And again, I'm also setting the looping to infinite. And the floors are shaking as they should be. I would just like to add some interval between the shaking so that it is not shaking constantly. To add the interval, I again needed to create a sequence and set the looping to infinite. Then to the sequence we can just add the shaking, and lastly I'm also appending an interval to the sequence, which will just make it wait. And at the start of the function I'm just waiting for some time, so that all of the floors don't start shaking at the same time. If you are not yet familiar with the await and async keyword, you can just check my tutorial about it. And now the floors start shaking at a different time, they have some pause, then they start again, and so on. I would really suggest you to go through all of the functions in the DOTween by yourself. So you can see that we also have the doShakeRotation, doShakeScale, and many other do functions. And if you are thinking that DOTween only allows you to change positions, rotations and that boring stuff, then you are wrong, because DOTween can do much more. You can see that it has some functions for the camera, for lights, for materials, so we can just fade in the colors nicely. We also can do some stuff with rigid body, transforms, which is what I have been focusing on the most. We can also fade and move all of the elements in the UI and much more. Let's now take a look at the final example, which is the moving boulder. So we'll be able to specify some waypoints and make the boulder move wherever we want. In the boulder script, I have created a class for the waypoint, which is holding the position of the waypoint, the axis around which we should rotate, and the time that it should take us to get to the waypoint. Then I'm storing a list of all of these waypoints, and I'm also drawing them with the onDrawGizmoSelected function, so that we can actually see where the waypoints are. So back in Unity on the border, we can just add new waypoints, and you will see that we can see the gizmo indicating where the waypoint is. In the transform, we also have a function doPath, where we could just input a vector-free array of all of the points where we want to get to, but in this case I also want to teach you about how we can run the tweens asynchronously. So we'll just get to one waypoint, we'll wait until we have actually got there, and then we will try to get to the next waypoint. So in the start function, I'm going to loop through all of the waypoints that we have. I will create new sequence that will be holding the movement to the next waypoint as well as the rotation, and then we can use the function to await the sequence. So for this I had to make the start function async, and what this just means is that it is going to get to the first waypoint, and it is going to wait until it has completed the first sequence, so until it has successfully moved to the first waypoint, and then it's going to continue running through the for each loop until we get to all of the waypoints. Then to the sequence I'm just adding the moving and the rotation, but you can notice that I'm not using the append function, I'm using the join one, because the append function makes it so that it first runs the first tween and waits for the next one. But what the join function does is that it runs them at the same time. So at the same time it is going to do move and do local rotate. This is pretty much the same thing that we have done for the saw blade, but we were not doing it in a sequence. But really, if you would add those two tweens in a sequence using the join function, it would do the same. And as we play the game, we can see the boulder is first going to get to the first waypoint and then to the second one. Yep, so it is working correctly. You can see that DOTween is really effective and simple solution for creating some simple animations. You can animate any movement, rotation of any objects in your game, add some custom easing and even create some nice UIs with it. There is still definitely a place for classic animation workflow using the animator and the animation window when you are, let's say, animating a character. But if you are making just some simple movement, rotation, maybe some fading of some colors and so on, I would really suggest you to use DOTween because it can save you a ton of time. And one quick bonus for you, if you want to tween just a vector 2, vector 3, maybe some numbers, colors, you can use the DoVirtual class, where you can see that we can tween colors, we can tween floats, integers, vectors, and vector 3s. So this one can be also really useful. I hope that this video was useful too. Don't forget to check our Discord server, which is a great community of game developers, and take a look at my Patreon, where I have just released my second video. If you have any questions or suggestions, drop them down to the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I will see you in next videos. Bye! Thanks for watching this video till the end. If you are looking for a Unity, C# or Bolt tutor, then I am here for you, so feel free to send me a message to my Gmail and take a look at my website for more info. I can help you with your personal projects or teach you anything about game development you would want to know. You are welcome.